The sleeping bag wasn't supposed to be moving. That was the first thought Deputy Erin Calloway had when she spotted it, bobbing awkwardly in the bend of Willow Creek, tangled in debris and tree limbs. Morning mist still clung to the water like breath on glass. Birds weren't even up yet, but Ranger, her black and tan K9 partner, was already growling low in his throat. Not the bark of prey or fear, the bark of instinct. "Leave it," she said softly, hand tightening on the leash. But Ranger didn't listen. He never disobeyed until now. With one sudden lunge, the German Shepherd yanked from her grasp and leapt into the river. Water exploded around him, the leash trailing like a whip. Erin cursed boots sinking into mud as she scrambled after him. He wasn't chasing wildlife. He wasn't fetching debris. He was pulling something. The current fought back, but Ranger fought harder. By the time Erin caught up to him, the dog was dragging the soaked, zippered sleeping bag onto the riverbank, snarling, pawing, whining with a tremble in his chest she hadn't seen since Afghanistan. And then the bag cried, a sound so faint it could have been the wind. But Erin's blood ran cold. It came again, wet, breathless, human. She dropped to her knees and yanked the zipper down with shaking fingers. Inside, wrapped in a ripped towel, was a baby, blue-lipped, trembling, and alive. She cradled the infant against her chest, unsure whether to scream or sob. There had been no calls, no reports of a missing baby, no Amber Alerts, no signs of anything wrong in Willow Creek population 6204, unless you counted the bitter coffee and dying Main Street pharmacy. But this changed everything. Back at the small-town sheriff's station, Ranger wouldn't sit still. He paced, eyes locked on the baby, even as the paramedics swarmed in. Erin sat against the concrete wall, soaked, her mind spinning. Where had the baby come from? The ER doctor guessed newborn, umbilical cord already gone. No bruises, no ID, nothing in the bag except a faint scent of gasoline, a single sock, and a melted plastic baby spoon. Maybe someone got scared, one officer offered. Left it upstream. But Erin knew better. She had seen fear. She had seen desperation. This wasn't abandonment. This was a message. An hour later, state investigators were on their way. Reporters, too. Erin hated that. The baby, who the nurses nicknamed Ash because he was found near burnt logs, was stable, recovering from hypothermia, but still had no name. No one came forward. No one called. And no one explained how a police dog could sense a baby floating inside a zipped-up sleeping bag. Erin scratched Ranger behind the ears. "You got something to say, boy." He licked her hand once, then turned to stare out the window, toward the river. If you're feeling the weight of this moment and believe in stories where animals save lives, please consider subscribing to Heroes for Animals. We bring you real emotional stories like this one, because sometimes a dog isn't just a dog. He's a hero. That evening, while everyone else was fielding media calls and writing reports, Erin drove alone back to the river. Ranger rode in the back seat, ears twitching with every bend in the road. She needed answers. The banks were empty now. The mud was drying, and the sleeping bag had already been bagged and tagged. But the trail didn't end there. Ranger began sniffing the air the moment the car door opened. His posture shifted, shoulders forward, tail stiff, breath focused. He was in work mode. "Track," Erin whispered. And he did. Through reeds, down a dirt footpath, across the rusted remnants of a deer fence. He stopped at a clearing just 20 yards off the road, sat down, waited. There, beneath the blackened remnants of an old campfire, lay a half-burned photograph. 3 people, a man, a woman, a child. All their faces melted by flame except the baby's. The shape of his mouth matched Ash. Erin felt a chill dance up her spine. She took the photo back to the station, ran it through every missing person database she had. Nothing. The metadata was stripped. No location markers, no timestamp. Still, something about it gnawed at her. The baby was clean, no dirt under the fingernails. No rash, no diaper rash either, which was odd. Whoever had him took care of him, at least for a while. And yet the birthmark behind his ear, a strange, curved crescent, kept pulling at her thoughts. It wasn't just rare. It was too perfect, too shaped, almost manufactured. She didn't even want to put words to that. Later that night, a nurse approached her at the hospital, mid-40s, soft-spoken. She didn't give her name, just a clipboard and a whisper. "I've seen that mark before." Erin froze. "Where?" The woman shook her head. "I can't say, but I'd check records from West Pine Clinic, the one they closed 3 years ago. For Suriname Fertility Clinic, among other things." The next morning, Aaron drove to the edge of town, where the weeds had overtaken the West Pine property. The clinic had been padlocked since the scandal funding fraud expired meds, a handful of quiet malpractice suits. Nothing criminal had ever stuck, but locals whispered about something darker. Ranger pawed at the side door tail, twitching. Inside, the place was empty, stripped, except for a crumpled file left in a drawer. A single name was circled over and over again in red ink: Eliza Thornwell, and next to it scribbled in shaky pen. He said no one would ever know. That night, Aaron held baby Ash as he slept. Ranger rested on the floor, one ear raised even in dreams. The storm outside rattled the windows, but inside, a strange calm. She didn't know where this road would lead, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just about a lost baby. It was about a secret someone wanted buried. And somehow her dog had dug it up from the riverbank like a bone meant to be found. The birthmark haunted her. Erin Calloway wasn't a woman who believed in signs, but she couldn't stop thinking about the strange, perfect crescent tucked behind baby Ash's ear, too symmetrical to be natural, too intentional to ignore. Every time she closed her eyes, it pulsed in her thoughts like a quiet metronome, ticking down to something unspoken. At the sheriff's office, no one had answers. State officials filed the case under infant abandonment, and the hospital labeled it endangered child recovered. But Erin knew better. She'd been a deputy for 11 years. She'd seen meth labs blow cults collapse and marriages end in murder. She knew the difference between something tragic and something orchestrated. And this was no accident. She found the nurse again after the evening shift, standing alone beside the vending machines, her scrubs wrinkled and her posture guarded. Nurse Sutter, Erin asked gently, not in uniform now, just jeans and a soft flannel shirt. She didn't want this to feel like an interrogation. The woman flinched at her name. I already told you everything. No, you didn't, Erin replied quietly. You said you recognized the mark. That's not nothing. Nurse Jolene Sutter exhaled slowly, her hands shaking as she dug through her purse for a cigarette, then remembered they were on hospital grounds. Her eyes were pale gray, watery. She looked like a woman carrying too much weight. I worked at West Pine, she whispered, before they shut it down. Fertility stuff, IVF, some research contracts. It was legal on the surface. Erin waited silent. Ranger lay beside her feet, calm but alert. There was a baby, Jolene continued, barely audible. 2 years ago, same mark, same face. Only that one never made it out of the building. Erin's breath caught. What happened to him? Jolene shook her head. I don't know. They said he didn't meet protocol. Whatever that meant. I left after that. Couldn't sleep at night. But the way they talked about those babies, like they were projects, not people. The next morning, Erin filed a request for sealed court records on West Pine. It was denied in under an hour. She tried again using an old FBI contact from her time overseas. The response came back 3 hours later. All files sealed under Federal Bioethics Act. Case closed. No details, no names. But someone didn't want the truth out. That evening, she opened her front door and paused. Something was off. Her boots were where she left them. Mail still on the counter, but Ranger was growling softly, ears pointed toward the hallway. She drew her weapon and found nothing. But on her kitchen table was a single manila envelope. Inside, a birth certificate with Ash's full genetic markers and a sticky note that read, "There are more." Later that night, Erin sat in her recliner, holding Ash in one arm, a glass of water in the other. She should have been exhausted, but sleep felt like a lie when the world she knew was coming undone. Ranger sat across from her, head on paws, watching the baby like he understood everything. You knew, she whispered, brushing her hand through the dog's fur. You knew he was out there. She didn't understand how. Maybe the river carried more than just debris. Maybe scent and instinct worked in ways science couldn't explain. Maybe some dogs just knew when a soul was alone. Whatever it was, Ranger found the child no one else was even looking for. And that terrified her. The next morning, Erin took Ash to her sister's house in Oak Hill. Melissa didn't ask questions, just hugged her tight and kissed the baby's forehead. Erin trusted no one else. As she drove back through Willow Creek, she noticed the black SUV. Parked across from the sheriff's station, no plates. She slowed down. Made eye contact with the man in the driver's seat, dark suit, reflective sunglasses completely out of place, in a town where dress up meant clean jeans and a tucked-in shirt. He didn't blink, didn't move, just watched her drive by. At the station, she reviewed every report from the day of the flood. There were 3 missing persons reports from counties nearby, none of them infants. 2 elderly hikers. 1 man overdue from a fishing trip. No mention of a baby. She flipped through the files again, heart pounding. The man overdue from fishing had launched from Coldwater Lake, about 40 miles upstream. Boat found. No body. What caught her eye wasn't the location, it was the name. Malcolm Virel. The same name circled on Eliza Thornwell's file. And now, missing. Erin grabbed her keys. Coldwater Lake was quiet by the time she got there. Late afternoon sun turned the water gold. She parked her cruiser at the edge of the launch and let Ranger out. "Fine," she said softly. He sniffed, circled, then bolted toward a nearby pine grove, barking twice before stopping at the base of a half-collapsed deer blind. Erin climbed the ladder. What she found made her blood run cold. Food wrappers, a first aid kit, a small oxygen tank, and a blood-streaked baby bottle. Back at the car, she called dispatch. "Run the name Malcolm Virel. Cross-check with anything federal, not just state." There was a long pause on the line. Then the dispatcher whispered, "Erin, this guy's not supposed to exist." That night, Erin sat alone in her office, lights dimmed. A storm rumbled outside, thunder grumbling across the hills. She stared at the old burned photo again. The child in the center, the woman with a soft face and gentle eyes, likely Eliza Thornwell. The man beside her, cropped obscured, but the jawline, it could have been Virel. She turned the photo over. For the first time, noticed a faint pencil scrawl in the corner. "Property of Unit 9B, do not duplicate." She printed the phrase and started digging. Government contracts, off-book medical research. She hit dead ends everywhere until she found a Senate subcommittee hearing transcript from 6 years ago. The subject, biological ownership in federally funded genetic trials. One of the listed contributors, Dr. Malcolm Virel. Erin leaned back in her chair, mind racing. Ash wasn't abandoned. He was escaped, and someone wanted him back. The sound of breaking glass was the kind that didn't just wake you, it reached inside your bones and shook them. Deputy Erin Calloway jolted upright in her recliner, heart pounding, one hand instinctively grabbing the Glock she kept holstered by her side table. She didn't need to guess where the noise came from. Ranger was already standing, ears up, chest puffed, growling low. Not playful growling, not protective growling, predator growling. She whispered, "Stay," and crept down the hallway barefoot, the wood floor cool under her feet. Her heartbeat hammered in her ears as she reached the corner. Her eyes swept the shadows of the living room. The back door was wide open. Curtains flapped from the breeze, the scent of pine and wet leaves drifting in. And in the center of the room, a boot print, wet, heavy, facing inward. Erin didn't speak. She didn't need to. Ranger moved like a ghost across the floor, silent, powerful, methodical. Then came the cry. Not a scream, a baby's cry. She sprinted to the guest bedroom. The crib was empty. No blanket, no baby. Just the faint warmth of a body that had been there. Until seconds ago. Before her breath could even finish leaving her chest, the closet door burst open. Ranger launched. A man, average build, black jacket, face hidden behind a ski mask, stumbled out holding baby Ash tight against his chest. But Ranger didn't bite the man. He bit his arm, the one holding the syringe. The attacker yelped, dropped the needle, and stumbled backward. Erin rushed forward, grabbed Ash from his grip, and fired once into the floor. "Don't move." But the man was already gone. Through the broken door. Vanished into the woods. Later, after deputies swept the area, Erin sat at her kitchen table, one arm wrapped protectively around Ash, the other wrapped in gauze from where she'd scraped it, tackling the man. Ranger lay at her feet, tail thumping weakly, tired but alert. Sheriff Danner stood across from her, jaw, tight eyes full of concern. "You sure you didn't recognize him?" "I'm sure," she said. No voice. No scent Ranger's ever triggered on. No car seen leaving. But he had a key. Danner frowned. "That door's supposed to be dead bolted." "It was. I checked it last night." "Then he's been watching you long enough to know how to beat it." The syringe was sent to the lab. Results would take days, maybe weeks, but Erin didn't need them. The liquid inside was pale green, viscous, labeled in marker 9B Revive. Ash, blissfully unaware, had slept again after the chaos. But Erin couldn't sleep. Not now. Not after someone tried to inject her baby with something out of a nightmare. She paced the living room, lit only by the soft glow of her table lamp and the thunder clouds rolling over the ridge outside. On the coffee table sat the half-burned photo she'd found in the woods. 3 people, a memory half erased. But this time she noticed something else. A number, faint, in the bottom corner. E1941. She ran a cross-check through every federal system she had access to. No match. She tried medical archives. Nothing. Finally, she searched decommissioned military facility codes. Hit. E1941 Experimental Unit 9B. Decommissioned. Nevada desert, 6 years ago. Supposedly destroyed. But what if it wasn't? What if it simply went dark? At 6:15 a.m., she drove out to Oak Hill to check on her sister. Melissa opened the door with a sleepy smile, cradling Ash against her shoulder. He slept through the whole night, she whispered. Didn't even fuss. Aaron smiled softly, relief washing over her in a fragile wave. Thanks, Mel. You're a lifesaver. Melissa narrowed her eyes. You look like you haven't blinked since yesterday. I'll rest when I know he's safe. You need backup. I've got Ranger. And a psycho breaking into your house. Aaron bit her lip. Just keep him here a little longer. Melissa nodded. As long as it takes. Back in Willow Creek, Aaron met with one of the only people she trusted in tech matters, Logan Rivas, the town's eccentric computer repairman, ex-hacker turned born-again Christian, who now ran a repair shop out of his garage with a cross on every wall and a safe full of conspiracy theories. She slid the birth certificate and photograph across the table. I need to find out who made this, and I need it quiet. Logan raised a brow. You planning to uncover a federal ghost town or just ruin your career slowly? Maybe both. He studied the files. These aren't fakes. The watermark's too layered. Whoever created this had real access. He glanced up. You're not chasing a person, Aaron. You're chasing a program. Later that night, Aaron pulled into the station to check her inbox and grab a backup radio. That's when she saw the note taped to her locker. No envelope. No signature. Just 3 words in heavy black ink. He knows now. Her stomach dropped. She turned, scanned the hallway. Empty. Silent. That night, Aaron didn't go home. She camped out in the old Ranger's Tower north of town. It hadn't been used in years, but it was quiet, remote, and off-grid. She wrapped Ranger in a thick blanket and held Ash against her chest under her coat. Thunder rolled through the night sky. She kept the lights off. She kept the gun loaded. And she kept the photo close. Somewhere out there, a man who was supposed to be dead was sending people after her. After Ash. And she knew now, this wasn't a case of a lost baby anymore. It was a case of a stolen future. The Ranger Tower creaked in the wind like an old man's knees. Rain tapped the tin roof in gentle, uneven rhythms. From her spot on the cot, Aaron Calloway stared into the shadows. Baby Ash curled up against her chest, his breath warm on her skin. Ranger lay near the doorway, ears twitching with every gust ever alert. The old tower might not have electricity, but it had something even better. Silence. And right now, silence was survival. By morning, the rain had passed. A low fog curled around the treetops and the sky glowed a soft, pewter gray. Aaron poured hot coffee from her thermos into a battered steel cup. She hadn't slept, not really, but she felt clear, focused. She looked at the manila folder on the wooden table retrieved yesterday from Logan Rivas, the off-grid tech wizard who owed her more than a few favors. He'd cracked the metadata on the birth certificate and the burned photograph. Inside were names, old ones, encrypted emails, redacted reports, mentions of Unit 9B going back as far as 2012. But one email stood out. Tum Virel from Thornwell E19 safevision.org. Subject you promised? I carried him. I protected him. He is not a formula. He is a life. If you touch him again, I will burn everything. Even you. Aaron exhaled slowly. She had a name again. Eliza Thornwell. The surrogate. The woman who had vanished. She'd been written off as mentally unstable, possibly suicidal. But this wasn't a woman unraveling. This was a mother drawing a line. Aaron packed up their things, tucked Ash safely in the infant wrap across her chest, and gave Ranger a pat on the flank. Let's go find the truth, boy. Back in town, she made a quiet stop at the old Willow Creek County Records Office. The building smelled like old paper and linoleum glue, and the lone clerk behind the desk didn't even look up. Perfect. She requested the West Pine Clinic's original building permits, citing a fabricated inspection review. The clerk, bored and mildly suspicious, handed her a musty box without question. Inside were blueprints. West Pine was supposed to have 12 rooms, but the blueprint showed 15. 3 of them were under a sub-level marked Special Access Only, 9B. Her heart clenched. She took a picture of the layout with her phone and left before anyone could ask questions. Back in her cruiser, Aaron pulled over 2 blocks from town and stared at the photo of Ash again. He looked peaceful, innocent. But she knew now he wasn't just a baby. He was evidence. And somewhere out there, the people who built that sublevel wanted to erase him. That night, she parked behind the old West Pine Clinic under the cover of darkness. The windows were boarded, the grass wild and knee-high. The place had the feel of a place forgotten on purpose. Ranger hopped out of the vehicle, first ears high body rigid. Erin followed, flashlight, low gun, holstered but ready. She entered through a back panel Logan had helped unscrew the day before. The clinic smelled of mildew and rusted copper. Floor tiles were cracked, paint peeled like old sunburn, dust thick as snowflakes. She moved slow, checking each room. Office, storage, former exam room. And then she found it. Behind a broken filing cabinet in a corner room, a metal grate bolted to the floor. She shone her light through it. Stairs. The air grew colder as she descended. Ranger stayed at her side tail, low, not afraid, but wary. At the bottom, the hallway narrowed. The doors weren't like the rest upstairs. These were steel, padded, soundproofed. Each was marked not with names but numbers. B1, B2, B3. Each with biometric locks, now rusted wires exposed. She pried one open with a crowbar. Inside, a crib. Dusty, empty. A wall covered in crayon marks, tiny scribbles of suns and faces in trees. Erin's throat tightened. She backed out. Room B2 had a metal gurney, leather restraints, and a drawer filled with children's clothing, all labeled with numbers, not names. Room B3 had something worse. A monitor, still faintly glowing, battery-operated, long forgotten but somehow hanging on. On the screen, a rotating list of names. Subject 1, terminated. Subject 2, terminated. Subject 3, failure to thrive. Subject 4, escaped. A blinking cursor beside the last. She leaned in. Current status unknown. A soft noise behind her made her spin. Ranger growled deep in his chest. Footsteps above. Someone else was here. Erin pulled her sidearm and motioned to Ranger. They moved silently up the steps, every board a risk. She stopped behind a cabinet, heart pounding in rhythm with Ash's now awake breath against her chest. A voice floated through the dark. Male. Calm. Erin, you're a hard woman to find. Her stomach dropped. She knew that voice. From her training days. From her early years in the military reserves. Dr. Malcolm Virel. He stepped into the hallway like a ghost flashlight, off no weapon in sight. He looked older than she remembered. Thinner. Sharper. Dressed like a man who lived underground. You don't have to be afraid, he said. Erin kept the gun raised. You broke into my home. You tried to take him. I tried to save him. Ranger bared his teeth. From what? Erin snapped. Virel's voice didn't change. From decay. From politics. From the war that's coming. That child is proof of concept. He wasn't born, he was designed. But she ran with him. Eliza. She lost her mind. You killed her, didn't you? No, he said too calmly. But I didn't stop what happened to her either. Erin's finger twitched on the trigger. He's not a concept, she said. He's a boy, and he's mine now. Virel tilted his head. You think you can protect him from the people funding all this? I don't need to. I just need to expose them. She stepped closer. And I will. Then she clicked the recorder in her pocket. Thanks for saying that part out loud. Virel's face shifted. Just slightly. Then he reached into his coat. But not for a gun. For a photo. He slid it onto the floor toward her. It was another burned image. This one Ash again, but older, or someone who looked like him. Surrounded by machines, tubes, monitors. With a label across the bottom. Subject for a replication trial. Erin's knees went weak. How many of him were there? Virel backed away. They'll come for him soon, not like I did, not quiet, not soft. And when they do, you better decide who he really is to you. And then he vanished into the night. Erin didn't fire. She couldn't. Because in her arms, Ash had started to cry. And somehow that sound mattered more. They left Willow Creek before the sun came up. Deputy Erin Calloway didn't bother packing a suitcase. Just diapers, Ranger's vest formula, a pistol, and 3 backup phones, burners. She drove the back roads, avoiding cameras, keeping to unpaved county roads, where the trees still leaned low enough to whisper. Ash slept in the car seat behind her. Ranger kept his head between the front seat's eyes, scanning the roadside. He hadn't barked once, but Erin knew he felt it too. They were being watched. She headed north through Tennessee, cutting through farmland and fog past old churches and hollowed-out barns. For hours, it was just the hum of the tires and the weight of what Virel had said last night in the ruins of West Pine Clinic. He wasn't born, he was designed. She hated the way those words echoed in her mind, like truth had always been just out of reach. and now finally cornered her. She glanced back at Ash, who was chewing on a soft blue giraffe plushie. Designed or not, he was human. She had seen it in the way he reached for her, in how he calmed when Ranger laid his head next to him, in his laugh soft and startled like every joy was new. He wasn't a secret. He was a son. By nightfall, they reached a friend's property near the Georgia border. A retired ranger, Pete McKinley, lived there, man of few words, big guns, and an unshakable sense of right and wrong. He'd served with Aaron's father in Iraq and owed the Callaways more than one favor. Safe house, Pete said, when she explained, handing her keys to the old hunting cabin behind his shed. Nobody but me and Jesus knows it exists. Let's keep it that way, Aaron said. The cabin was rough but sturdy. No Wi-Fi, no electricity unless she fired up the gas generator. The windows had thick shutters. There was a pump for water and a cellar beneath the floorboards, originally for whiskey, now just dark space, and air that tasted like earth and rust. She laid Ash in a padded crate lined with blankets and fed him while Ranger paced. His movements were sharper than usual, more alert. "What is it, boy?" Ranger paused near the window, growled. Not loud, just enough. Later that night, Aaron couldn't sleep. She sat outside under the porch awning, shotgun across her lap, while Ranger lay beside her like a shadow with teeth. "I'm scared," she whispered. Ranger didn't move, but his ears flicked at her voice. "I'm not supposed to be, but I am. What if they come here? What if I can't stop them?" The dog lifted his head and pressed it against her leg. "Warm, steady. You're the only one who knows how deep this goes," she murmured. "And you can't talk." Thunder rolled low in the distance. The smell of rain crept in, but something else came with it. Gasoline. Aaron stood fast. So did Ranger. She darted inside, grabbed Ash, cradled him tight. Then she noticed the fuse cord under the window frame, the generator outside wired to blow. "Get down," she yelled, diving into the trapdoor cellar just as the porch exploded behind them. Wood splintering glass raining from the rafters. Ash screamed. Ranger howled in pain. And for a moment the world was nothing but flame and ash. When Aaron woke, her ears rang. The cellar was intact. Ash was still in her arms, sobbing. And Ranger was bleeding from a cut across his back, but standing, watching the stairs. "Someone knew," she muttered. "Someone tracked us." She pulled her radio from the bag. Static. Dead. All burners, no signal. They couldn't stay. She wrapped Ranger's torso in torn fabric and packed quickly. Within minutes, she had Ash back in the car engine, running headlights off. Pete met her at the driveway, rifle in hand, a deep frown cutting across his weathered face. "They used drones. Caught him about a mile south. Might have tagged your vehicle. I need to ditch it." "I'll get rid of it," Pete said. "Take this one." He handed her the keys to his old Ford Bronco. "No GPS, no camera, no nonsense. You keep that baby safe," he said. "And Aaron, whatever this is, end it." They drove deeper into Georgia, where cell towers were few and isolation felt like air. At a highway diner near Jasper, she parked behind the building, ran in with Ash bundled up, and asked for a booth in the back. No badge, no uniform, just a mother and her child. That's how she had to look. Ranger sat outside the window watching. Always watching. Inside the diner, while Ash slept on her lap, Aaron flipped through the file Logan had decrypted earlier. One name popped out again and again. Senator Charles Rainey. Midwest, agricultural lobbyist turned biotech investor. He was on the funding board for several projects, including Unit 9B. And his private plane had landed in Tennessee 2 days ago. She called Logan from a payphone, voice low. "I need to know where Rainey's staying." "Aaron, you're not seriously..." "I'm not waiting for them to come again. I'm taking the fight to them." A pause. "Okay, there's a private airstrip near Beechwood. Rainey's security company booked a rental house 3 miles away. You sure you want to do this?" "I'm not asking for permission." They drove through the night. Ranger stayed alert the whole time, eyes flicking to the mirrors, tail twitching when headlights lingered too long behind them. By the time they reached the gravel road leading to the rental, dawn was graying the sky. Aaron parked half a mile out, took Ash and strapped him into a carrier against her chest. Checked her weapon. Ranger stood by the door. "I don't know what we'll find," she whispered. "But we're not walking away this time." Ranger gave a low bark. And they moved. The house sat at the end of a gravel road surrounded by trees that looked like they'd seen too much. It wasn't big, just 2 stories of timber and glass, with a detached garage and a luxury SUV in the driveway. Too nice for a rural rental. Too quiet to be innocent. Deputy Aaron Calloway crouched in the undergrowth, Ash snug against her chest, his little hands curled into her coat. Ranger stood beside her, tense but composed, his breath controlled. He was a soldier again. It was almost dawn, the kind of pale, trembling light that turns shadows into doubts. Through binoculars, Aaron watched a man step out onto the porch. Gray suit, wide shoulders, a face she recognized from political ads and televised hearings. Senator Charles Rainey. He stretched like a man without a care in the world, then lit a cigar. She knew men like him, arrogant, untouchable, powerful enough to erase families with a signature. Behind him, someone opened the door. Dr. Malcolm Varel. Still alive, still smiling, still walking free. Aaron didn't have backup, didn't have a badge. But she had proof, the recordings, the files, the photos, and most of all, Ash. And she had Ranger. That was enough. She crept around the property's edge, slipping through the back fence into a line of boxwoods. Ash stirred but didn't cry. Maybe he knew. Maybe he sensed what was coming. Through a basement window, she could see rows of hard cases, coolers, and whiteboards. One word kept repeating across the board: replication. A soft click in her earpiece: Logan. I looped the cameras for 20 minutes. It's now or never, Aaron. I know, she whispered. She slipped inside through the unlocked rear mudroom, Ranger behind her, silent as breath. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and money. Aaron held her breath as she moved past the kitchen, ducking behind a set of columns. Footsteps echoed from above. Voices, low and professional. We moved the asset tonight, Varel was saying. Another week and we won't be able to track the surrogate. Let her run, Rainey replied. That baby's just one of many. Aaron's grip tightened on the pistol. That asset was sleeping against her chest. She waited until Rainey walked into the study and Varel disappeared up the stairs. Then she moved. She stepped into the room with Ash and Ranger right beside her, gun pointed steady. Rainey turned. His cigar fell. Don't, she warned. I know you, he said calmly. You're the deputy from... Shut up, hands where I can see them. Look, whatever you think this is, I know what this is, she said. You used federal funding to conduct illegal gene editing on unconsenting women. You turned babies into science projects, and you tried to kill the only witness left. Where's your proof? Aaron tossed the USB drive on the desk. Right there. Behind her, Varel's voice came cold and measured. You should have run, Aaron. She turned. He was holding a stun gun, aimed at Ranger. But he was too late. Ranger launched. Varel dropped the weapon as the dog hit him mid-chest, knocking him into a bookshelf. Papers exploded into the air. Ranger pinned him with a growl deep enough to shake the floorboards. Aaron moved fast. She cuffed Varel with plastic ties from her belt and turned back to Rainey. Sit, she snapped. And he did. Because suddenly the truth wasn't a theory anymore. It was in the room. It took 10 minutes for local law enforcement to arrive, called by Logan from a nearby tower. Aaron surrendered her weapon when they came. She didn't need it anymore. She had the files, the baby, the names, the photo. And most of all, she had Varel and Rainey alive. The state police would make arrests. Federal eyes would follow. And maybe, just maybe, Ash would never have to grow up wondering who he was. 2 days later, the headlines hit. Senator Rainey linked to illegal human trial program. Whistleblower deputy exposes government cover-up. Canine hero saves infant from genetic testing scandal. They didn't print everything, but they printed enough. Aaron sat on her front porch back in Willow Creek, coffee in one hand, Ash cradled in the other. Ranger lay stretched across the wooden floor tail, thumping as morning birds chirped above. Peace, real peace, had weight. It didn't come in waves, it settled slowly like dust after a storm. Ash was officially hers now. She'd signed the adoption papers the day before. No red tape, no hearings, no objections. Just one line. Guardian Aaron Calloway. Melissa stopped by with bagels. Pete dropped off a bag of homemade jerky for Ranger. And Logan, he'd started building a firewall company, called it Ranger Code. I figured the dog deserves his own empire, he said with a grin. Aaron agreed. Ranger didn't bark much anymore. He didn't need to. His job was done. That night, Aaron tucked Ash into bed, kissed his forehead, and whispered the same thing she always had. You're safe now. She stepped outside, looked up at the stars, and breathed in the soft summer air. She'd lost a lot, her job, her quiet life. But she'd gained something bigger, a family. And it all started with a dog, dragging a sleeping bag out of a river. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey with Aaron Ranger and baby Ash. At Heroes for Animals, we believe that the silent ones, dogs, babies, survivors often carry the biggest truths. What would you have done if you were in Aaron's place? Would you have gone public or stayed hidden to protect the child? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, where heroes have fur and justice comes one paw at a time.